What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Riley of Vintersea. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for being here today, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, man. It's awesome to have you here. I love Illuminated. I still listen to it to this day, and it's a fantastic album. And Woven into Ashes is just as good. For people who haven't heard the full length album yet, though, with the singles that we heard so far, is that maybe a good representation of what this whole record is going to sound like, such as Unveiling Light, and At the Gloaming Void, or is that just the tip of the iceberg of what's to come?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think when you said it's the tip of the iceberg, that's about right. The album's very eclectic. We go through a lot of different sounds, a lot of different styles, and those two they definitely get at the aggression that's throughout the album. But there's a lot of depth in this one as well, which we couldn't show in just two tracks. So there's definitely more to explore here. But yeah, we felt like those two would give people a good taste of what we were doing this time around.
Yeah. Is this just a continuation or picking up where you left off after Illuminated in a way, or is this meant to sort of like signify like a new beginning for Vintersea in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I always have described this album to me as the perfect combination of our previous two records. On the first album, The Gravity of Fall, we really went very progressive with our structures. We let ourselves experiment a lot. On Illuminated, we tried to write really tight songs that were kind of stacked vertically, so very deep in terms of layering. This one was the perfect combination of both for us. So for me, it's the best of both worlds and is just a natural evolution for the next step of Vintersea. That said, it represents several years of our lives. It represents a lot of big changes that we've been through personally, and it's definitely its own thing too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always thought that with the progressive nature of Intersea, that it is a fairly experimental band in a way, with how you were able to go in many different directions. And I remember when like you opened up with Illuminated, when you go to Spawn Awakening and you kind of go into old ones, and then the title track Illuminated, which really serves as a retrospective. I think it's fair to say that it's a very experimental band, right? There really are no things confining you to a specific sound.
That's one of the most important things we always tell ourselves. It's like rule number one: there are no rules. Rule number two: no eye gouging. That's it. That's kind of our ethos as we go about writing, is to just write the music that we want to hear. And most of the time what we want to hear is a mashup of a lot of different sounds, a lot of different textures and genres, and all our favorite bands, all the bands that influence us the deepest, that's how they go about making music too.
Um, does it ever start off with a preconceived vision in a way, or is it a very improvisational songwriting process?
Yeah, it can go either way, but usually the way that we start writing an album is we start with a general concept for the whole album, and that can be usually a story of some kind or some journey that Avian wants to go on lyrically. And then once we come up with that overarching theme for the album, then we can figure out what riffs do we have now, what riffs do we need to write to get to those emotions, those end goals, so that we can tell this story the way that Avian wants to tell it lyrically. So yeah, it really does depend. There are times that we write the song because we need a song that's about love, and love can be many different things. It can be destructive love, it can be painful love, or whatever. But sometimes that's where we start. Sometimes we start with the song, with the riff, with the beat, whatever, and then later on figure out where that's going to fit in the arcing story.
And because I remember interviewing Avian in 2020, and she said like that there was specific video games in a way that inspired the sound of this the last album with Illuminated in a way. So conceptually speaking, is this conveying a similar storyline in a way, or is this almost kind of new territory in terms of the concept that's being explored in Wintersea?
Yeah, yeah. So there is a storyline to this album as well. This one it's about the life cycle of a soul. So the whole idea of a soul going through multiple different lifetimes in order to grow. to learn different lessons. So early on, you know, the spirit is very angry, very young, very confused, very hedonistic. And so we get to play some really heavy stuff, and we wrote some really heavy stuff to complement that idea. And then as the album progresses and the spirit matures, just as happens when people go through life, you would hope at least, then we started to be able to write some more mature, more progressive music. And so it really does follow that arc from, you know, just hot, hedonistic, balls to the wall metal to a much more refined, still heavy, but also melodic and introspective kind of a theme too.
So is this meant to be listened to in a chronological way of starting with Unveiling Light and ending with No Tomorrow in a way? Was that sort of to meant is that every song meant to be kind of like a new step for that said soul in a way?
Exactly. Yep. Yep. So we actually, when we conceived of the album in the first place, we drew a big circle on the whiteboard and had 8 little hash marks for different steps that this soul would go through on its journey to enlightenment. And each one of those hash marks is a song. So in order to go on that journey with us, you definitely have to listen to the album from start to finish.
Is this meant to be sort of like? Is there at all any personal introspection with either with you or Avian with this? Was your personal experiences almost involved in this, or is this soul meant to be sort of like a metaphor for something you all went through, or is this more or less kind of like portraying maybe like a character or an element outside of your personal lives?
Yeah, it's both. I would hope. It seems like it definitely works on multiple levels. On one level, it is, you know, just an opportunity to write fiction. Essentially, I mean, we're all very creative people, and you know, we were able to come up with this idea of this character that has to start from basically nothing, confusion, you know, brand new soul in the universe in order to find some sort of enlightenment. But it really worked for all of us because I mean, we're not the only ones that have been through a lot the last few years, but we definitely have been, you know, different personal problems. We've all lost people, you know, family members, friends, to sickness or you know, even just the social isolation of the last few years. And we all got through that in some cases together, and the band really helped a lot of us get through those times. You know, big personal switch ups with relationships, or like I said, losing family members. So we definitely had to come to some sort of enlightenment ourselves, to understanding that death is just a part of life, and that, you know, it's really not worth it without the payoff at the end. So that's was the impetus for writing this album for all of us, was what we've gone through together over the last few years. It's also an opportunity to write.
Well, would you say that compared to Illuminated or The Gravity of Fall, that this is more of a personal album for all of you?
This is absolutely our most personal album yet. Yeah, I would say on the Gravity of Fallen Illuminated, of course we used it as an opportunity to express what we were feeling at the time, but for the most part that did feel more, a little more disconnected, a little bit more like we were writing fiction. And in this case, I mean, the lyric writing sessions were very personal. Avian and I did most of that together, and there were, as we sat down to write songs, there were things that we wanted to get across. There were times where I said specifically, Avian, this thing that I know you went through, you know, this is the opportunity to explore that. And we don't have to ever tell anybody, you know, what that was, how that relates to this song. But I know, because we've talked about it, how you felt about this. And in my opinion, this is the opportunity to explore that. And then I had the same sort of epiphanies for myself too. So it's absolutely our most personal album. It contains several of our most personal songs, and it really helped us heal. And I hope that it helps other people too.
Despite having similar experiences that influence the concept of this, you know, you're all individuals, we all take pain differently and we all have our different experiences. So was there a lot of having to putting yourselves in each other's shoes when making this in a way? Like, did you almost have to see things from each other's perspectives in a way, or were you just more or less channeling your own experiences and then combining them into one concoction for Woven into Ashes?
Yeah, we were definitely empathizing with one another. And I think luckily that's fairly easy for us to empathize with each other because we all care about each other so much. I mean, the risk of sounding cheesy, it's just the truth. Like Jeremy has been one of my best friends, our drummer Jeremy, since we were 17 years old. And I've known Avian since like the month after she moved to the United States from Malaysia. And I mean, we're very close, and we've gotten very close over the last few years. I would say that the pandemic probably brought us even closer together, because we had to lean on each other, and rely on each other and trust each other. And so yeah, it's pretty easy for me because we're also open and honest with one another, for me to put myself in Jorma's shoes, or Jeremy, or Carl, or Avian, because I know what they were feeling in many cases as they were going through these things. So in a lot of ways, it's natural for us to empathize with each other, but it's also very important that we don't just channel our own personal thing, but understand where each other was coming from.
Well, you all were making music together even predating Vintersea with that Asterion project as
Mhm.
well, right? And I was going to lead you into that because, I mean, this year or next year is going to mark 10 years since the release of Constellations from Asterion, but you've all been making music together now for almost a decade. But I was wondering, with Asterion and Vintersea pretty much consisting of the same lineup, what was really the overall differences? Because I feel like people who were listening to Twin Peaks or Nilion or The Precious Nothing almost kind of, I feel like that there's a similar emotional energy that's channeled into Asterion as with Vintersea.
Yeah, I mean, Asterion really was just kind of the prototypical Vintersea. It was pretty much the same band with a couple of little alterations, but we just didn't really know what we were going to be at that time. We were listening to a lot of very technical music at that time, bands that used a lot of astronomy kind of themes, like Between the Buried and Me. We were listening to Parallax 2 a lot at that time. The Contortionist, we were listening to them a lot at that time. There was just it was kind of a scene that we felt like maybe we could fit into. But as we started writing music and writing stuff that was a little bit more blackened, a little bit more natural and organic sounding, we realized that we didn't really fit into Asterion, which means starry sky or constellation in Greek, and that we kind of needed to find something that more closely identified with our sound and with where we live. And so nothing is more Oregon than the ocean in the middle of January. It's very gray, very, very cold. And that was really the impetus for the name change. And also there were a couple other Asterions floating around out there that it was just a great opportunity for us to set ourselves apart before we put out our first full length record. And so that's really what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, I think with every Portland, Oregon band, it doesn't get more cold and gray than just the sound of you guys with the Yobs and the Agalox and the Onto Others and every band, past, present, and to be. I feel like with the Portland bands, all of you are very much are what you create.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a scene that is influenced by where we are. I mean, when you have, 10,000-foot stratovolcanoes on one side of you and the biggest body of water in the world on the other, it's going to influence your sound.
You know, when are you guys gonna shoot a music video on Mount Hood? I'm telling you, the whoever Portland band does a music video on top of Mount Hood, those are the kings of Portland metal.
Yeah, yeah, the top of Mount Hood, that'd be interesting. You have to climb up from Timberline. Closest we've come, Skies Set Ablaze. Our first music video is Vintersea. It was at one of the little rivers that runs off of Mount Hood, and Mount Hood's in the background. It was at one of the snow parks there. But yeah, to actually climb up to the top with gear, oh, Avian would kill me.
Uh, well, I mean, well, she's the lead singer, so she doesn't have to carry any gear. Isn't that
She will though, man.
the?
She's gotten strong lately. She's loading up gear with the best of us.
Oh, really? I heard I read at a Hard Times article that like a singer was given a Nobel Peace Prize for helping the rest of the band like carry the gear in.
And we appreciate it every time she does.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't take it for granted.
Yeah, bring your shittiest gear into on that music video for the Mount Hood shoot. Make it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see Illuminated. I could almost listen to Illuminated. I've always said I've always wanted to climb that mountain. That was always a dream of mine. So I thought about maybe, I'll bring the best of Portland songs, and I definitely want to make Illuminated when I finally make it to the top.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Take a video.
Now, now, in order when it comes to the songwriting process, because you all had a mutual collective energy in the lyrical and the musical aspect, but isolation is such a great fuel for creativity. And being the guitarist of Vintersea as well, is it better when you're all in the company of your bandmates when writing the material together, or is isolation something that you tend to thrive off of in your songwriting?
Yeah, I've actually been asked this recently, and I had to think about it a little bit. And I realized that for me, inspiration tends to come when I'm alone. So like first nugget of the song usually comes to me in some kind of solitude, whether it be while I'm hiking. I hum constantly while I'm hiking. Little things will pop into my head, while I'm driving, that sort of thing, or just while I'm practicing guitar, of course. But then the song comes together and it gets iterated and developed with each other in the band room. So it really has to be both for me. Um, if I have to try to develop the whole song on my own with no help from my bandmates, I can get there eventually, but it's not as strong as it would be if we all work together. But at the same time, a lot of times when we're in the band room and I've got nothing, like not even someplace to start, it's kind of ugly. Like I have to have that time alone to get into my own mind and find those original nuggets of inspiration.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and when you are a very conceptually driven band, is research almost as much of a part of the songwriting process as picking up the instrument and writing?
Certainly on the lyrical side, there's a lot of research that we do. A lot of times when Avian and I sit down to start penning lyrics, the first thing we do is spend 15-20 minutes just like word clouding, or something like that, just coming up with what's the theme we want to get across, what do we need to say, and then just finding words or ideas or themes that get us there. Musically, it tends to be more about internal inspiration than external inspiration, I would say. It's luckily a lot of times the original musical ideas are written by me, Jorma, and Jeremy, and then Carl has been more and more integrating himself into that writing team as well. But usually when the three of us sit down, we have a pretty good language between the three of us. And when I say, okay, this song needs to be hedonistic, it needs to be mean and nasty, those are the words that we use to start writing music, and we can usually get there.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is when you are going to be playing this material live, to have woven into you, because you're going to have to bring songs from the whole catalog, from the Gravity of Fall to Woven into Ashes, bring some illuminated aspects in there too. So do you think that that's going to almost bring another layer of context when you're bringing in songs from different eras and multiple spaces in time, just sort of like one live setting?
Yeah, it's something we're really excited to do because we basically released Illuminated like a month before the pandemic started and didn't really get to play it for a long time. So when we finally got back to touring, we were just playing that album start to finish over and over and over again. That's all we really played for a couple of years. And so now that we have a third album and people really want to hear music off of Illuminated, and a lot of people want to hear some stuff off of the Gravity of Fall as well, we're having to craft a set, for the first time really, that's not just an album start to finish. And because we're such a conceptual band, that's interesting because part of us would just want to play Woven into Ashes start to finish because that's how it's meant to be heard. But luckily there are enough repeating themes and ideas throughout the albums that we're able to put together a set that still takes people on a bit of a journey, while playing their favorite songs too. Because yeah, I mean, people have been asking us to come to Texas for almost 10 years. We can't show up and not play a couple of their favorite songs.
Yeah.
I'll leave it a surprise for now.
Well, I mean, and hey, we could always go. I mean, and not to discredit, I would love to hear "Woven into Ashes" and front to back live. But like, I mean, I could always just listen to that album front to back anytime I want. I think to bring a Vintersea experience and shuffle the set list around will bring its own experience that can't be repeated anywhere else.
Exactly. I think that's a very good point. Yeah, it's at this point we have enough music that when we're playing live, we want to make a unique experience for people. And yeah, we're really excited to get back out there.
Hell yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Just with Woven into Ashes coming out very soon, this album is absolutely awesome. Thank you for this music as well. Is there just anything else with Vintersea you'd like to promote with the release of Woven into Ashes in terms of tours? Is there a chance you could bring Vintersea to New York finally? Because I've kind of been waiting for that since the first note I heard of Illuminated.
Well, thank you so much for that, and thanks so much for having me today. It's been really fun to talk about Woven into Ashes, and you had some great questions too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so the album comes out on Friday, May 5th, and then May 5th we start a tour in Houston, Texas. We're playing with Moonspell, Elaine, and Oceans of Slumber, and we'll be playing from May 5th in Houston through May 14th in Vancouver, British Columbia, everywhere on the west in between. So check out tour dates and come see us because we're going to be putting together an awesome set. The other bands are incredible, and it'll be the first real opportunity to hear this music live.
I mean, I just saw that tour this past Saturday, and it was epic. But I'm still a little salty that you guys were not on that tour for the New York date. Granted, it
Oh
was a very,
yeah, yeah.
granted it was a very early show, so you guys probably would have ended up going on at like 4 in the afternoon when I probably wouldn't have been able to make it. But like, still, get to New York one day, please.
Yeah, it's right on the top of our bucket list. We want to get to a lot more places. We would have played this whole run if it had worked out, but you know, we're still trying to make this transition to where we can tour a whole lot more. So, yeah, we'll get to New York. We have a lot of friends and fans up there. Jorma is from the Northeast originally, so we're going to get there. But it's a long way, man.
Yeah, it's a long way, but worth it. We bring it here.
I believe you.
Yeah, but thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Vintersea, Woven into Ashes, out May 5th. Be sure to pick that up. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot, man. That was perfect. Thank you for like a
Awesome.
really good
Thanks so
interview.
much.
Yeah, I appreciate it.